And the Indiana Pacers back in the conference finals, first time in a decade. They'll face the Celtics starting on Tuesday. Come back from down 3-2, win the last two games, and defeat the Knicks in 7 games.
What is up, Pacers Nation? You are listening to the Pacers Post Up, brought to you by the brothers of basketball, Brad and Ryan. Whoa there, Mike Breen. Don't get too excited. What a pathetic broadcast from ESPN on Sunday afternoon. But all the bias in the world was not going to stop the Indiana Pacers from disposing of the trash that is the New York Knicks. A historic Game 7 in Madison Square Garden. And in the city they say never sleeps.
Turn out the light, the party's over.
All right, Pacers Nation, we are back for yet another episode of the Pacers Post Up. I'm going to call this a Game 7 celebration episode. Not that you want to celebrate too much. We got a game tomorrow, which is exciting. But when you do awesome things, you got to take a moment to just revel and enjoy them. And this was a pretty phenomenal weekend in Pacers basketball. A historic weekend, Ryan. And we're going to kind of break it down from all angles here over the next little bit. So much to get into. I feel like Friday night Game 6 is almost an afterthought at this point, and maybe we can sprinkle some of that in throughout, but really it's about Game 7. It's about what we just did in the Mecca, Madison Square Garden, the biggest stage, and all kinds of different storylines and excuses and the typical, charade in the aftermath. But I think we just have to start with what we were feeling going into this game, expectations, and where we're at now. What do you make of this team going to the Eastern Conference Finals this season?
It's been one of those seasons. It kind of just feels like since the in-season tournament, we've just had a little bit of this juice that's been flowing. There's been a buzz with this team. I think everyone's fallen in love with the personalities, the cohesion, especially after the Siakam trade. Even Tyrese hinted at this. I think we realized our ceiling got much higher with that, and everybody fell into place. And then you go into the playoffs and you beat two really good teams. I know they've had some injuries, but Rick said it best. When you go into the Garden and you win a Game 7, you put yourself on another stratosphere. Yeah, I agree 100%. And the reality is, in the history of this league, there's always been a little bit of luck in title runs. You've got to have the injury, odds in your favor, if you will. And Lord knows this team has experienced a lot of, not just injuries, a lot of circumstances dating all the way back to the brawl. Yeah. There's been that was always a year that we felt like could have been a championship team. And obviously we know how that goes. We've lived through the Paul George era where he snaps his leg, Team USA, Oladipo with the quad, even smaller injuries. I think a lot that Brogdon team. Warren was always out. This city's been through this. We can relate to Knicks fans and Bucks fans. Even if you look at the Colts, same thing with Peyton, Andrew Luck. We've gone through this.
We had a quarterback retire in a preseason game. Come on. Listen, I understand it, and I'm sure if I was on the Knicks side of it, I'd be crying injury a little bit as well.
Yeah, and one thing should be noted, Kevin Pritchard has gone out and seeked non-injury prone players since that Brogdon team era, because we dealt with that so much, and it was, year after year saying, we just need to see this team healthy, but it was clear that was never going to happen. So you go out and get a guy like Siakam and Tyrese, these guys who don't miss a ton of times, keep Miles. So there's been an effort for that, but I think we should talk about the game because this was awesome. And I don't know how Pacers were feeling going into Game 7 in the Garden. I didn't even know what to expect, honestly. I wasn't expecting a blowout where...
No, I wasn't either.
Everybody plays well. Top to bottom. Maybe we won't mention Obi a ton in this game.
Yeah.
He had a phenomenal series anyway, but
for sure.
Legitimately everybody else set at the playoff record, 67% from the field. And it was awesome. Tyrese was John with plaid shirt fan on the court side, and it felt like an Indianapolis, Knicks Game 7 series that we've seen before, and it resulted like it had a few times before.
No doubt. And that was probably the coolest part, is that there is so much history between these two franchises, and it really felt like it just got picked right back up. And all of the, you've got Josh Hart in game 2 where he's leaning into Reggie saying, I'm pretty sure they're saying, fuck you. That's a quote. That's not from me. But and then that kind of comes full circle. Reggie's tweeting after the game. You've got the Halliburton with the sweatshirt on. And so much of that has just played into this storied rivalry. And you can't forget the Paul George era when New York was really relevant for the last time before now.
Yep.
It was, I want to say it was, that was the J.R. Smith, Shumpert, Mello, Stoudemire team. And I think we won that series in 6. They were the higher seed, but this has just been a lot of fun. Yep. And I have to say that I actually, as much as people were talking about the ESPN Knicks coverage and the bias going into the game and the Stephen A. walking in, and I loved that.
Yep.
I absolutely loved it. The celebrities all getting on camera. They're on Twitter, this, that. I love it because they deserve to lose.
Yep. Well, and Knicks fans, regardless of their injuries, had penciled themselves into the Eastern Conference Finals.
100%.
You can tell that they thought this was kind of their season. I don't know if they had themselves going to the finals or beating Boston, especially being down as bad as they were. But they thought they had us this series. And obviously being confident, Garden, the atmosphere there for being up, 15-20 for a large part of that game, they were going nuts still trying to get the team back in it. But it was really fun. And this is when we were doing some of our, even before the playoffs, who do we want to play this? We want the Knicks to be good because it's more fun to beat them.
Yeah, it is. It's 100%. A Knicks series win feels a hell of a lot better even than a Bucks series win or Sixers or what. It's just not the same. It's not the same, and it's because of all the pomp and circumstance that goes around this team, the bravado that their fan base brings, right, wrong, or indifferent. They are a rabid fan base.
Oh, yeah.
And so that makes it more fun.
They were chanting Alec Burks when he was making a little run in there, and they were down legitimately 15 points at the time, but you could hear them in Game 7. I don't know where. I'm assuming everybody listening to this podcast watched the game, but they were going. Obviously, you said it. All the celebs are talking shit, getting ready. And Stephen A's got Spike Lee doing an interview, getting one. They really, in their minds, thought they were going to win this game, and we hit them about as hard as you can hit anybody.
Yeah, we did, and I think let's talk basketball a little bit, because I think that's the point here. Yeah. I was really encouraged to see a steadiness from our team, particularly 1 through 5 in the starting lineup. The moment we were so far removed from Game 1 in Milwaukee, to Game 7 now, the jitters, the horrendous shots.
Playing out of our own style. This game, we came out, we had a clear game plan, and if we're going to start talking the game, it was clear that OG didn't have it.
Yeah,
and
he couldn't even walk.
No, and it was pretty obvious immediately. And if you watch the first couple minutes, I think, Siakam starts 4 of 4 or 5 of 5 from the field.
Yeah.
And it was a clear emphasis. We're going to look at him with OG and now OG hit a couple pretty miracle shots.
He did.
But he didn't have it, and we started that way and then really never slowed down.
Yeah, it was Siakam early. That was if it's a 1-2 punch, it was Siakam early with the first punch. And then really right as the game started, because we were shooting, there was a point when Mike Breen's like, the Pacers are shooting 70%, but they only have a 5-point lead. And that was not that Halliburton hurt him, but that was right when Tyrese started to look to get his.
Yep.
And, he hits I think it was a little floater or something. It wasn't even a 3 that gets him going. And then you could tell he was looking for it. And he started the talking.
Yep.
And as much as that can come back to bite you in the ass, depending upon how you play, it's always been a good thing for Tyrese.
Yep.
When he gets engaged and he's chatting and he's doing the Tyrese performance, I feel like that always benefits him. It fires him up, knocks down 4 threes.
Well, yeah, so he only took 1 shot the first 6 minutes or 7 minutes of the game, and then at the 5-minute mark, he hits that 3, turns to plaid shirt guy in the front row, starts drawing, then has that shot in the paint where he gets in the paint, almost looks to pass, goes up, and then hits 3 more threes going on. On the last one, you could tell he is sprinting, and TJ is looking for him the whole time to get him in a spot, gets to that left kind of wing area, drains it, 14 points in the first quarter, and you hit it at it. We were holding the lead, but it was kind of a 3 to 5, 6 point game, and then Tyrese got us up to that 12, 15 point range to end that first. And we really never looked back. So it was the 1-2 punch that set the tone.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to, what this team has really been lacking for forever. I mean, you could go back. The closest thing we probably had to it was maybe PG and David West in those, and listen, you would have loved if Granger could have been better. That's not the point here. It's, again, Siakam struggled in the first 2 games. There's no doubt about it. OG gave him problems, and that may be something to look at in future years. This Knicks team's not going away.
Yep.
They've got draft capital. They've got, cap space potentially.
And they'll make moves.
Yeah,
they'll see.
They're going to be a problem for us. But Siakam over the last 4 games averaged over 20 points in this series. I think that duo has continued to prove, really strong for us. And I was encouraged to see that early. However, the game, when it got into the critical moments of this game, and really we go into half, they make a little run, right?
So it was really going into half, they make a run. It was 70-50, and I believe they go ending that half and then starting the third, it goes all the way to 70-62. So they went on a 12-0 run against us. We just kind of went out of our offense. You knew they were going to make a run.
And it was turnovers too.
Yes.
And that was, there were a couple of, I think, traveling calls. There was a throwaway. There were just some boneheaded, empty possessions that were self-inflicted. And we're going to have to clean that up, obviously. But I think it's important that you hit on it. It got to 6 or 8.
Yeah.
That was the
lowest was 6.
6.
Yeah.
Okay. And we call timeout. And that run, that 12-0 or whatever, that gap closing to 6 felt a little bit like game 5 in terms of it was just getting away from us, right? We were really, this is the funny thing about our pace. We talk about playing fast, but there's a difference between playing intentionally with pace and being sped up. And we were very sped up during that time. And I think that's where you saw some of those turnovers and what have you. But I truly think it was the quote unquote others that got us back.
They answered the call between Nembhard, Nesmith, and then TJ. So TJ checks back in, I believe, with about 6 minutes left in that third quarter.
Yep.
We are up 7 at that point, and we go on a 15-4 run right after when he comes in. And it was a couple turnovers where TJ and Tyrese had that one, the one where Brunson unfortunately ends up, they throw it up to Tyrese, and he ends up breaking his hand on Tyrese's hands. They have the 5-second call that they get, and then they have the big play that really separated and got our momentum back, where TJ did his usual, stood on the other side of the court, found Nesmith, and won on a heck of a layup by Nesmith, who also had 2 or 3 pull-up jumpers in this game.
Yeah.
For someone who had lost his shot, he goes 8 for 8, and I think we got to talk a little bit about him because, 1, his shots were huge, and 2, clearly the adjustment Rick made of putting him on Brunson, and this has been obviously documented, gave him more fits. Now, he still got his and obviously couldn't finish this game, but those 2 adjustments made and then him finding a little rhythm offensively is why we were able to extend that lead back out again.
Ryan, we've talked about it on this podcast, and we talked about it right at the start of the playoffs. It's matchups and coaching. And the biggest coaching adjustment that was made in this series was Nesmith on Brunson. And it was the perfect call. It was what allowed us to hang in that game 3 and get to the Miles Turner block and the Nembhard miracle shot, because if we lose that game, this series is over. I mean, you go down 3-0, we're not talking, this podcast isn't happening. So it was the critical adjustment, and Nesmith, for all of his offensive struggles, has continued to be the hustle player that he is. He's overly physical at times and gets some foul troubles, and listen, I was even frustrated yesterday with the amount of time Nembhard had on Brunson. Some of that was a little head scratching, just with how bad, frankly, he had played him. But
that was the best he's played against Brunson, I thought, was last night.
It was. There's no doubt. It was, but I thought it was a little bit of a head scratcher from a coaching decision-making standpoint. But, we can nitpick another time. I think Aaron Nesmith is such a huge part of this team going forward. And he can shoot. I mean, I don't know where he finished the regular season, but it was top 5 in 3-point percentage and hovered around 1 or 2 all year. I was just really impressed. And he gets it goes perfect from the field.
Yep.
And like you said, that was that 5-point swing in the end of the third quarter when Nesmith completes the N1 off the TJ steal on the inbounds. Most critical play of the game.
Yep.
And that really, while and I guess it's worth talking about because there's just so much to get into. That was what really put the nail in the coffin almost, because then Brunson goes out shortly thereafter. And once you heard that, you kind of knew. But it was, even a guy like Ben Shepherd, watching his defense, what do you say about that?
There was a couple highlights that I don't even know who posted them on Twitter of just watching him navigate screens, because those are the types of things that even watching you don't notice, but he's flying through screens. I think he had 2 or 3 steals in this game. He was switched on Brunson and held his own, even stripped him once or twice, got out in fast break, had a nice little floater. He played composed. I know when we was drafted, and really when you get into the late first, early second, it's kind of a crapshoot anyway, but it wasn't a very popular pick. I'll just say, if you read NBA media and people, they thought he went a little early. Clearly now this is a home run pick for us, and a guy who, for a rookie, I didn't look phased at all being in a Game 7 in the Garden.
Not at all. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I said it at the time that he is a big reason why we felt confident dealing Buddy Hield. You could see the writing on the wall. There was minutes being split already. Ben, clearly from a shooting perspective, and this is no discredit to Buddy, one of the greatest shooters of all time in this league, but Ben's got a great shooting form. He clearly, he's shooting like 50% from the corners and 41 overall from deep in the postseason. So this is a guy that's going to continue to get better, I think, and what he brings defensively as his body fills out, and he's 22 years old right now. I see him being a key piece for this team.
His defensive instincts are off the charts for somebody his age. It's similar with like Nesmith and Nembhard. These guys, as they grow in, I know Nembhard's had some troubles, but if you still watch them, they're battling. And I'm with you where we've talked about where does this team, its next growth, because Siakam was kind of our big moves.
Yeah.
It's all these guys, and we're seeing it right now. They are already growing through these series, and it's just so impressive to watch how poised they are. To shoot this well in the Garden in Game 7 and set literally a playoff record is absurd. And it wasn't one guy who took it. Obviously, I think Tyrese was our highest with 26 points. And then we had 18, 19 for Nembhard. It was everybody.
It was, and it was against, and I get it, the injury asterisks there, whatever. But New York had made their whole identity about physicality and defense. And we were getting great looks, knocking down open looks. And I really do think that, and this is not about Thibodeau and his style. That's another conversation for a different time. But I think our depth wore this team down over the course of a 7-game series. The fact that we were able to get meaningful contributions from guys like TJ, Shepherd, Obi had a great series. Even Isaiah Jackson yesterday made some critical plays. Offensively and defensively, getting rebounds. We out-rebounded him again. I forget what the number was, but it was every winning game in this series, whether it was Pacers, Knicks, the team that out-rebounded the other team won the game. And that's going to be, I don't want to necessarily shift our focus too far forward yet. We'll talk a little bit about Boston here, but that's going to be key going forward. And I guess more than anything, I'm excited. And I'm surprised in the sense that it feels ahead of schedule, but the entire year has felt ahead of schedule. And frankly, it's what we've said all along. This is the team. We've lost to the shittiest teams in the league. Wizards, Blazers, Hornets, Raptors. You run down that list. We've lost these boneheaded games, and it's been so frustrating. But we've beat all these good teams. And I don't know, Ryan. I guess because we're kind of putting the, Game 7, once Brunson went out, it was what it was. They never really got it close in the fourth quarter. And we could talk about some of the, post-game commentary, what have you. But where do you put this? The sports books have us as a total wash. We're like 25 to 1 to win the title. But what do you see going into an Eastern Conference Finals for a team that, Rick said it yesterday, we're not supposed to be here. We're the uninvited guests, and here we are.
Well, the good news is, and you can look at this a few ways, but we've got momentum. We've got clearly confidence that we can play with anybody. We're not scared of Boston. Yeah. We've got, the matchups are going to change. It's going to be a different series, but there's still going to be all that physicality, things we've already answered that we can do. I don't see why we don't have some confidence. Sure, Boston has had a few more days off, a little bit of rest.
Yeah.
But sometimes that hurts you in certain games like this. I mean, if we're going to come out and shoot 67%, which the ESPN crew loved to say would never hold, but
it did.
Yeah. But it's, I don't know the exact word. I'm positive, obviously, this season is already a huge success.
Can we win this? Can we win this series? Yes or no?
It's ridiculous how out of it some people have us.
Yeah.
And that Vegas line has to be almost because there is so much money on Boston that they can't take it. Because there's no way that that's actually the odds. And we've seen this. And again, I don't want to say, but one injury too, and then are they that favored?
The whole thing changes, and that could go for us too.
Yeah,
Siakam or Halliburton goes down, and
then it is over.
You're in a tough spot at that point. Yeah, I mean, listen, Boston has been the heavy favorite really
all year
from the jump, but I will say this, and I've thought about this now for 24 hours. They really haven't been battle tested, if you will. I know that Tatum's got some, I think, finals experience. But in terms of this,
he has a lot of experience losing in the Eastern Conference Finals.
I was just going to say, I was going to say it's more bad than good from that experience. And frankly, their run here. Again, you want to talk about injuries against a Jimmy Butler-less Heat team where they, go 4-1, and then you've got the last round against the Cavs where Mitchell's sitting, and Jared Allen didn't play, and I'm sure they're looking the same thing at us. But I guess to your point about momentum, we feel like the more battle-tested team, at least recently.
Yeah,
I get it. Tatum, Brown, veterans, Drew Holiday, Horford's been around for God knows how long. I like where this team is at. And I think I will be stunned if we don't win one of the first two games in Boston. That's how I feel right now.
I love that. And it's just the way we're playing, and our style is so, because we run and gun, as long as we can get these stops and find our rhythm, we can shoot with anybody. In fact, I think we shoot better than anybody, and I've proven that. And that's what I was telling. I had one of my Knicks buddies that was in town this weekend, and we were talking right before Game 7. And I was like, honestly, if we come out and we're just hot, I think you guys are screwed. Now, that wasn't a firm prediction, but it is one of those things where if you can steal just one in Boston, why can't we win 3 at home again?
I mean, we have not lost a home game since early March. It's been over 2 months, and so I think it's going to be. Listen, Boston's favored. They should win this series. I don't want to say I expect, but I do kind of expect that. At the same time, this is not, in my mind, oh my God, we made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Let's celebrate. This is not the mountaintop, right? Because we've seen, whether it be injury or change in dynamics, you don't get here.
No.
This is not, we're going to have a new champion 6 years in a row now is the stat I saw for the NBA. So getting to the Eastern Conference Finals is not the end goal. And now that you're here, why not go win it?
Take advantage of it, because it's like you said, you don't know when your next run will be like this. I mean, when you would have said in 2014, the last time we were here, that it'd be another decade, I would have thought that team would have had a little bit more run in them for sure. And things just happen. Players leave, injuries. It's just what happens. And we've had this, and we've had a fortunate path that has worked out in our favor, but we've taken care of business with it now. And I'm with you. I don't know. And I think that team, it's like Rick said, and I forget what game of this, but keep your edge. That's where it is. And I hope this team enjoyed last night. It was a really cool moment. Looking back, once this is all said and done, we'll be able to enjoy this season no matter how this ends up. But I'm with you. If we can come out and, like you said, steal one of these first two, get them on their heels a little bit. They are by far the most talented team we played so far.
Yes.
They are. defensively, they've got the matchups are going to be way different. Maybe we'll touch on that, or maybe we'll do it later because they've got a lot of guards to throw at us and wings. So it's going to be Tyrese is going to have to guard somebody.
Yeah, let's get into that real. I want to before we do. I want to say one thing because you hit on it, and I think this is something I've been thinking about for the last little bit today. That team that we had, the PG era, we all felt like that could have gone on a little longer, right? And it's been 10 years now. Yep. And I guess if you're a Pacers fan listening to this, I think it's important saying enjoy this time and understand, get out, celebrate this team, show up at the fucking games, okay? I don't want to see any Boston people in the stand, period. Not that there were a lot of Knicks, but I don't want to see any of that. And this is the best time to live in Indiana. I mean, you've got Pacers basketball. I love going to the race. I know you're not a big race guy, but this weekend, I mean, Carb Day on Friday, game on Saturday, race on Sunday, game on Monday. I don't know, as a sports fan in the city of Indianapolis, how could you not be more proud? And I'll say this too, and shout out, not that he's ever going to listen to this, to Pat McAfee, just owning the ESPN time slot and giving all the prop to Indy because he gets on there and just unloads love for this city. So it's a fun time. And that's not even talking about Fever and Caitlin Clark and some other stuff that's going on there. So get out and enjoy this. But let's talk about Boston and the matchups, because I think that's the most intriguing part about this, because stylistically, where we were basically polar opposite from New York, we're much more similar to Boston.
They're going to want to shoot. I mean, they're shooters. They shoot as many threes as I think anybody in the league does.
Number 1 and 2 offense in the league. So I guess I'm curious your thoughts, Ryan, on coming out in game 1. How do you think we address matchups to start this series?
I was looking back, and we've only played them once with Siakam, so it was kind of tough to see how. This would be my gut of how everything matches up. So it'll be Horford Turner. That's an easy one.
Yeah.
I think Nesmith draws Tatum.
Okay.
You probably put Siakam on Brown.
Yep.
And then Nembhard, I think, would go White, and then Tyrese on Drew. Now, this is the problem, and where Tyrese is going to have to step up very much, because whereas on Knicks, even when he was guarding Josh Hart, because he couldn't shoot, you could play different style. Here, they're all shooters.
Yeah.
And specifically, if that's how it goes, Drew Holiday will post him up, which will cause some interesting mismatches and movement. And I'll be curious, maybe we switch more in this series, whereas in the Knicks, it was like, if Nesmith's on him, we're holding through the screen. So
we're fighting through. I think there's 2 things that I'm most interested in. I agree with your matchup lineups. I think that's how we start this series. I also am going to be really curious how we've played 2 teams whose best players were point guards. Going into now, whatever, Milwaukee, New York. That's not the case this series. And our defensive strategy of picking up 94 feet, pressuring the ball, you're not going to do that with Tyrese. If Drew Holiday's bringing the ball up the court, that's a recipe for disaster, because Tyrese is just not that gifted on that end of the floor. But I'll be curious to see if we do that, and then how much, like you said, how much we try and switch. And if we trust and Obi Toppin to come in and play Jason Tatum. And how much mirroring of lineups do we do? Because, frankly, Obi was not on the floor earlier in the year. He got pulled off of it because of his defense, which I think is much improved. And the other piece, so I guess it's the 94 feet strategy and how we attack that. And the other piece is, can we sustain our edge on the glass? Because it was clear in that Knicks series, like I said before, we made that an emphasis. I remember seeing a photo of our practice between Game 5 and Game 6 where there was this orange blob sitting in the middle of the net to, like, the ball could not even go through the net. It was going to not. So they were obviously emphasizing that, and rightfully so, as we got destroyed in Game 5. But I don't know this, Ryan. Are the Celtics an aggressive rebounding team? I mean, are we going to struggle on the glass there? I know Porzingis is a question mark for the first 2 games. Do you think we can keep our rebounding edge?
Physicality-wise, I think there's a little bit the matchup with at least starting this series with Turner and Horford. Horford's not going to be as aggressive as Hardenstein, who's maybe one of the best, if not the best, offensive rebounder on the glass. Although the difference will be, and we kind of hinted on this, the guards are going to have to help. Nesmith is going to have to close because of how many long threes they're going to take and pull-ups. That creates those chaos rebounds. And we saw the reason why Knicks could hold around is a lot of those times when they get those long rebounds, they turn right back into another three.
Yeah.
So you're just in scramble mode the whole time. So the guards will have to collapse. They did a much better job in the last 2 games of this series also. So that's one area that I think you're right on, where rebounding physicality will be huge. I do think, I don't want to say it's an easier matchup on that front, but it feels a little bit easier than Hartenstein and Achua and Josh Hart, who got every loose ball, it felt like, imaginable.
He did. I agree with you. I think that is, it's going to come down to, frankly, 2 teams that like to shoot. Who gets hot, who gets the second chance looks, and frankly, it's going to favor a lot of home teams. Yep. I think in this series, I've seen a lot of Celtics in 5, Celtics in 6 type of deal. I really like our home court advantage. I feel good about that going into it. But the beauty here, as it's really been we're a 6 seed, as it's been all, series, or all playoff, I should say, we're the underdog. Yep. We not that we don't have anything to lose. We do, but
there's no pressure per se.
There's no pressure on this team. It's about going out and playing for 48 minutes, which we've proven that we can do. Yep. I guess I have been, and we can kind of bring this in for a landing. I've been really impressed with Carlisle and his ability to get the most out of this group, particularly when our backs are against the wall. And we've had, whether it was the complete dud of a game in Game 5 against the Bucks, you bounce back and close them out. Again, 2 really hard-fought, tough games in 1 and 2 of this Knicks series. Games that we probably should have won in hindsight, with some of the officiating bias or whatever you want to call it. And then, obviously the bounce back after Game 5, we've shown an ability to do that. So if set everything else aside, this postseason could not have gone up to this point any better for a young team that's got, whether it's Halliburton, who's 24, I think Neesmith's 24, Nembhard's under that. I don't know what his age is. Turner's 28, 29, something like that. Siakam's really the only 30-plus guy in the starting lineup. McConnell's obviously a little bit older, but Toppin, who you've got to re-sign. We've said that. You have to do that. Shepard, Jackson. I mean, these are all guys that are...
Well, and that's when I hit about our growth is going to be, if we're going to focus on this series and the Celtics, but maybe in the offseason when there's talks of where does this team improve, it's all these guys just getting better. Because like you said, most of our core is 24 or under.
Yeah. And we got a top 10 draft pick who hasn't really seen a minute of action. And our top 10 draft pick last year, who hasn't seen it, Matherin. So it's crazy that we haven't even talked about him, but this has been a hell of a ride. And I've really enjoyed it. And like I said, I think we can win this series. What's your, I'm going to ask you hot take. What's your prediction going into, we got Game 1 tomorrow night. I mean, there's no turnaround. It's here.
It's going to be awesome. I would love to predict us. I think it'll probably go against us maybe 4-2 in this series. We'll have to see. The one thing I do like about this matchup is they've got a lot of guards and wings, but our bigs and our bench are where we can have a lot of success. I think Miles' movement and stretching Horford, who is not as mobile as he used to be, should be huge. Whoever they want to put on Siakam, he's going to have the size advantage in that starting lineup. And then clearly our bench has been our strength through both series, and TJ changing games, and Shepard and Obi. So there's more that I think people realize we have some advantage, not saying that we're the more talented roster, but I think somewhere in that 4-2, 4-3 Celtics. But if we're sitting here with a win, I would not be shocked.
I'm going Pacers in 7. I'm the most biased that there is, and I'm sure I'll get hate for it, but I'm fine with that. I'm a big believer in momentum. I'm also a big believer in maybe even sometimes unrealistic confidence in yourself. I think back to, and we were in the building, that Monday in-season tournament game, Tyrese against the Celtics. It's what got us out to Vegas. I think that this team really believes that they are able to beat Boston. And like you said, all the pressure is on the Celtics, and they are the better team.
Yeah.
The other slight edge that I would give us, and this is not any disrespect to Joe Mazzulla, but I still think we have the coaching advantage.
Yep.
I think Carlisle will be the winner in terms of adjustments, whether that plays, in our favor, ultimately winning the series. I truly do believe that head coaching experience will play a factor in this. And I'm looking for more McConnell magic.
Yeah.
Wow,
he's just been so much fun. He's awesome.
I had to bring up his name because I feel like we haven't talked about him enough. He made the steal, but this is a guy that, and if you haven't listened to the JJ Redick podcast today, he had some really cool words about TJ, and just how he's gotten where he's gotten. Yeah. He's on an unbelievable run.
And does he have one of the most unstoppable go-to shots in the game? I know that's kind of a wild take, but I don't think it's that outlandish.
Well, so Trae Young tweeted out, I don't know if you saw this, after yesterday's game. He's like, anybody that says TJ doesn't have game doesn't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And I listen, if you were going to stop it, why aren't they stopping it?
Yeah.
He is getting into the lane, causing havoc, rising up for that little dinky mid-range. And, it's funny. I mean, you go to Pacers games throughout the year, and if you follow their social media at all the players on this team said, who has the best move, the one best move? And they all said McConnell.
Yeah.
Because he just gets to his spot, rises up, and even if you're 6'7", 6'8", you're typically too late.
Yeah.
And so, listen, whatever. It's been a fun run so far. Like we said all along, beating the Knicks, there's just something a little sweeter about that. Listening to Stephen A. cry today, wearing a doctor's outfit because his team's in the infirmary. I mean,
talk about unlikable.
It's beyond unlikable. And I will say this, New York deserves this. New York is a cesspool. I can't stand the city. I don't like any of the celebrities that sit there. They're all arrogant. And let me tell you this, Pacers fans, they don't like you either.
No.
So keep that edge because nobody likes us. There's a reason they call it Hicks versus Knicks. So there's nothing redeemable about that celebrity crowd. I'll just leave it at that. And I love putting them, putting their season to an end. So that's my own personal take on it. But anything else, Ryan? We've got game 1 tomorrow night, TD Garden, not Madison Square Garden. Anything else you're looking forward to at this moment?
Nope. I'm going to do what you said. I'm going to enjoy this. We're going to be going to both next games come Saturday and Monday, and let's hope my prediction's wrong and you're right.
Yeah, let's go Pacers. We'll come at you here throughout the series. Eastern Conference Finals. Let's make it to the finals.